Hi there! Welcome to a new video on the Sugar Dude channel. My name is Irene and today I am going to sew a onesie for baby Ella. But for sewing baby clothing, I make an exception. So normally I would just stick to making quilts. Nice and easy, mostly sewing straight lines. I'm very comfortable with just quilting cotton that is not stretchy, but for sewing baby clothing I make an exception. I haven't been making any clothing for myself, but I have made some baby pants and onesies for my kids. And today I thought let's film a video to show you that that is not so scary as it sounds. So yes, there are some curves, and yes, it is knit fabric. But I think that makes it a lot easier to sew with actually, because there's stretch, there's a lot of wiggle room. So in this video I will show you the two feet that I love to use for sewing knit fabric, and I'm going to take you with me while making this project and show you what I'm making. The project that I'm making today is the rolled hem romper by Brindille and Twig. This is a very cute pattern, and it makes a kind of onesie with buttons on the front. And I've already started with cutting the fabrics. So first you print the pattern in the size that you like. Baby Ella is now 6 months old and I have printed out the pattern for 6 to 9 months. Normally the Brindle and Twig patterns are really true to size, so 6 to 9 months should fit her perfectly. I decided to just make 2 rompers at once, so I'm layering the fabrics and then cutting out the shapes with my rotary cutter. Now that all the cutting is done, it's time to start sewing. And the PDF pattern is really clear on what steps to take and what to do. And I think when you do this a lot and you have all the tools, you would use a serger for this, for sewing that knit fabric. But I am using a regular sewing machine, and I'm using my foot 2A. So this is a Bernina sewing foot and it's 2A. But what it has, and I think you can get this for every sewing brand, is a little pin over here. Let's see if you can really see that. And I'm going to show you in a minute while I'm sewing what that does. But just to explain it a little bit, you line up that pin on the edge of your fabric and the thread you're stitching. So you're stitching a flexible stitch. Don't know if that's the correct term, but that stitch will go over that little pin. And what that does is that your fabric isn't pulled inwards, so the stitch stays nice and flat because it's going over that pin. And while you're sewing, that thread will just move off that little pin towards the back and yeah, make a beautiful stretchy stitch on your knit fabric. And the other foot I'm using is my Patchwork Foot. So this one is 97D. And I use that because it has a really nice 1/4 inch sizing. So you can use this foot to line up your fabric on the side and have a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Yeah, I think that's it about the tools, so let's get sewing. Before we start sewing, we need to put a little piece of interfacing on the edge of the front of the romper. So I'm pressing that on over here. The reason I'm putting a scrap piece of fabric on top is that I've had too many times that I've placed the interfacing sticky side up so that it glued to my iron. So just to prevent that, I'm using a piece of scrap fabric. Perfect. So first thing we're doing is matching up those shoulder seams. So this is the back, and this is one piece of the front. And here we have the other piece of the front. So matching up those shoulder seams, since that's the first thing that we're going to sew. So I'm putting in the 2A foot, and now let's find a stitch that is nice and stretchy. On the Bernina 770 you can select what type of project you're working on, what kind of fabric, and I always like to go for this setting and then choose that one. And you see it also recommends the 2A foot, and then I'll go for stitch 13. It's just a stitch that I like for this kind of project. What it did now is change these settings. So it changed the tension, the thread tension, and it changed the pressure of the foot, and it selected a nice stitch. And one thing I see now that I need to change is my stitch blade. So this stitch blade has only a small hole over here, and we actually are going to make a wider stitch, so placing in the 9mm stitch blade. There we go. And now we're all set. I line up my fabric with the edge over here, and then you can just start sewing. So as you see, the needle goes to this side, and then it makes a stitch all the way to this side, and in between here there's the little pin, that little bar. So this stitch is actually now laid over that bar, and that prevents it from being tucked in. So that is why the fabric is laying nice and flat, even though there is a stitch pulling on it. And that is a seam nicely sewn with a stretchy stitch. So there was a little yarn bulk up at the beginning because I didn't move it underneath the foot quite well. So this is what that stitch should look like, and as you can see, it's nice and stretchy. And this is what it looks like from the other side. So a stretchy seam. Sometimes the sewing machine has a hard time with the start of a seam. So when you would start sewing over here, it could have a hard time with pulling that fabric underneath. So what could happen is that, let's just take a look at that. There will be a little bit of bulk of thread over here, like you saw on my shoulder piece. You see here a little bulk of thread, and you can prevent that from happening. Let's say I would want to sew over here. Then I can prevent that bulk from happening by not starting all the way to the top. But of course you do want stitches over there. So when you just start a little bit away from the top, And then you'll just sew to where you want to sew. And then you flip your work and start a little bit away from the beginning. And then stitch all the way to the edge. So what you see here is that the machine doesn't have any problem with starting in the middle. So that's fine, there's no thread bulk happening. And you can sew all the way off the edge. So if this is something that your sewing machine, what your sewing machine does, so sometimes when you don't feed the fabric correctly, it will bulk up. To prevent that, just start a little bit away from the beginning, and then flip your work and sew the part that you skipped. So I'm now going to attach the neckband, and actually I'm just going to start at the center back. So there's no trouble with starting point, bulking of thread. I'll just start in the center and then move my way all the way to the edge. And I need to stretch this while sewing. So I need to maneuver the fabric in such a way that both layers, so the neckband and the body, are on top of each other and stretched evenly. And you don't want to pull too hard on the fabric while sewing, but you can give it a little stretch, of course. And since we're working with stretchy fabric over here, there is no problem with not completely lining up your fabric pieces perfectly. What the gap that you see here, it's just maybe 1 millimeter, 2 millimeters. It's tiny gaps, and so don't be too precise. There we go. That is one side of the neckband added. I always love how this looks. So you've just added something with a stretchy stitch, and then you fold it open. It looks just professional. I am not a professional at all. And there is a complete neckband added to the romper. Pretty cool, right? I will just go ahead and assemble the romper. And romper? We would say romper, I guess, but this is called romper in English. I have no clue how you would pronounce it. Maybe 1C is better. Is a better name for this. But I will just continue assembling this, sewing it together, and if I run into any more tips and tricks, I will show you. I could say that I would give you instructions, but it's not really instructions. I'm just trying. I haven't learned for this in any way, so when I'm pinning like this as well, I will just stretch it a little bit and try to make those two fabrics lay on top of each other. But what you're starting with is this. So I started with this pin in the center and the pin on the side. This is, by the way, the sleeve that I'm attaching to the body. So this is the front, the back, and sleeve. The pattern will tell you all the steps that you need to make and in what order to assemble. But now it's time for the sleeves, and this is a curved edge, and with quilting this would scare me, but with stretchy fabric there is so much wiggle room. So you'll just go around the seam and place some pins. Just place as many as you'd like and stretch it and manipulate the fabric a little bit until it lies the way you want it to. Yeah, that's I guess that's all there is to it. Just give it a try. If this is something that you'd like to make one day, just go ahead and give it a try and see how it goes. So on this side it looks pretty and it looks neat, but on this side it's messy, right? But since you will only be stitching on the outer edge over here, you won't this messy part won't bother you while sewing. So just focus on that complete outer edge, that is flat, and then you're all good to go. There we go. So I will just do as I previously showed, starting a little bit away from the edge. And then when I'm done with the whole seam, I will get back to stitching that first few centimeters. There we go, that's it. That is one sleeve added to the onesie. So all the seams that I needed to sew are done. It's looking quite big. I'm not sure that Baby Ella is this big already. Yeah, so everything is in, from the neckband to the sleeves, and here for the legs. Two things left to do now. We need to finish the hems, and then also put the buttons in place. Time for some buttons. So there it is, almost a project complete. Just need to place the buttons over here. Or are these called buttons? I don't know. I'm not an expert in this. I just wanted to show you how I'm finishing this this project. So here we have a little thingy that goes on the back, and then this one that goes on top of that. Then with the fabric in between, yeah, then it will stick. So I guess I'm going to do these ones at the bottom, and then this one with the little knob on top. I guess. Or do you do it the other way around? Yeah, I think so. That should go there. Yep. Okay, now how to get this out? Okay, then let's first do this one. Ta-da! Best tutorial on this ever. There we go, and now we need to do this over here. And then this one. Over here. Ta-da! Perfect. Yay! And the great thing by using these is that you don't need to sew this. So we're just going to place buttons, and then you don't have a sewing line over here. Yeah, so that looks good. So here's a little trick to get those parts on the other side in the correct position. So the first two buttons are in place, and I could also place this one in place. And then when it's all laying flat, you can just press on them. So that will make an imprint on the fabric. So here you see that imprint. That is the position that your button should go. So there we go. I place this so that those white pointy parts come through. And then I place that other part in here, and then yeah, then I'm sure that it's on the right, in the right position. Ta-da! All done! There it is, all finished. And all the little buttons are on there. Well, I think they are called snaps, right? Snaps? Yeah, perfect. I love these metal ones. I like the look of the plastic snaps, but they just snap too tight, so I'm always scared to rip my fabric when I open the snaps. But these are perfect. So I'm very curious if Ella already fits in here, or if this is still way too big. I'm not sure. Can't really tell by looking at it. It does look a bit big for her, but she's growing like crazy, of course, like babies do, so it will probably fit soon. When it fits, I'll make sure to post a picture of her on Instagram, or share it with you to show you how it fits. It was a lovely project to sew. Thank you for following along. I hoped this will help you in any way when you want to try to make some project like this yourself. When you want to sew with knit fabric on a regular sewing machine, this is how I do it, and I hope it helps a little bit. Thank you so much for following along in this week's video. It was a wonderful project to make this afternoon. So hope to see you again next week on the Shooby Doo channel.